Hotel. Welcome to Journey into Self. I'm your host, Sarah. Tonight, we're going to present part 11 of our series on Donald Trump outside of our establishment. A lot has happened since the last show. It seems like an avalanche is coming down, heading for Donald Trump. And just for a brief review, all of this started the first stone in the avalanche was initiated by Elon Musk, who was Trump's former head of the Department of Government Efficiency, colloquially known as Doge. But they apparently had a falling out. Elon Musk resigned from Trump's cabinet, and they exchanged words. And some of the words that were exchanged by Musk basically insinuated, or not even insinuated, Elon Musk basically stated that the reason why Trump doesn't release the files on Epstein is because he's in it. I thought it was interesting the furor that that statement elicited, because that was not new information. That information had been around for at least 10 years, going back to when Jeffrey Epstein was on trial, and Ghislaine Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were on trial. But it was swept under the rug. It was barely discussed when Donald Trump was running for president the first time. It wasn't discussed hardly at all, which ended up helping to facilitate his election, which underscores part of my point in establishing that Donald Trump is part of the establishment, because had he been an outsider and not part of the establishment, this information would certainly have come out to prevent his rise to the presidency. Certainly, there is plenty of dirt, if you will, on Trump, but the media, which is part of the establishment, the corporate media, if you will, is part of the establishment. And so they were part of the facilitation of Trump becoming president. But now it appears that the establishment has either lost patience with Trump, or the furor around the Epstein list and who else was involved with Epstein, and how deep down the rabbit hole it goes in terms of who were involved in the sex trafficking, who were involved in the pedophilia activities, uh, who were involved in some very nefarious activities. And the rabbit hole is indeed deep. So it appears to me that, as opposed to allowing the rabbit hole to be able to be pursued and going down, that the establishment seems to be willing to sacrifice Donald J. Trump and hope that by giving him up, that the furor around trying to find out who else is involved will die down. That'll remain to be seen. That's my projection about what's happening now. Over the past weekend, the furor has escalated significantly. And part of the reason that that has come to pass was based upon Trump's very uh, reactive uh, behavior in the wake of the um, information that's been coming out about Trump's connection to Epstein, documents uh, being promised to be revealed based upon the Epstein files that had come out during the initial trial. And again, this information, much of it is already public information, but is being brought back out to the forefront right now. What tended to escalate some of the discussion is the fact that and we talked about this on the last show, his attorney general Pam Bondi had back in February of this year had suggested that, or she stated, not suggested, she stated that she had the files on her desk, was reviewing them, and was planning to release them all. But then later, she recanted that statement, and Trump said that the files don't exist. He's come up with different stories saying that they're fake, they were fabricated, all of which has further stimulated deeper research to basically dispel all of the falsehoods that Trump seems to be throwing out there. Nothing seems to be sticking, and he seems to be getting increasingly frustrated. So I will, as uh, an example of the depth of his frustrations, I'll share this post by Donald Trump on his social media, Truth Social, where he says, "I'm running out of patience with what used to be my loyal supporters being fooled by the liberals and their obvious hoax. It's the only thing they're capable of. Those who continue with this bullshit will be identified and a serious price will be paid. You have been warned." This is the ominous message that Trump has sent out to his followers, showing his increasing level of frustration with those who are part of the MAGA cult. I will share with you this also recent comment. Excuse me. Okay, so this is was posted by Occupy Democrats. Not that I endorse them, but I found their information to be on point thus far. Donald Trump asked to his face if Attorney General Pam Bondi found his name in the Epstein files, while Caroline Levitt stands visibly uncomfortable right beside him. This is the response of a deeply guilty man. That's commentary by Occupy Democrats. It says, on Epstein, the Attorney General briefed you in the DOJ and the FBI's review. The findings of that review, the Attorney General briefed you on that, being a reporter. On what? On the, asked Trump, who seemed to be having a trouble hearing lately. On the DOJ and the FBI, said the reporter. On what? On what subject? Trump interjected again. Epstein. On Epstein. On the review of the files. Attorney General Pam Bondi, replied the reporter. A very quick briefing, claimed Trump. What did she tell you about the review? And specifically, did she tell you at all that your name appears in the files? Asked the reporter. No. She's giving us just a very quick briefing, said Trump. And in terms of the credibility of the different things they've seen, I would say that, these files were made up by Comey. Yeah, they were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden administration. I'm sure he was going to continue. Trump first trotted out this absurd new lie that Barack Obama wrote the Epstein files over the weekend amidst the growing mega backlash over his refusal to release more information on the billionaire pedophile's case. Unfortunately for him, much of his base is rejecting the idea outright, as you saw in Trump's initial reaction. We went through years of that with the Russia hoax, and with all the different things we had to go through, Trump went on. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well. It's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. Yeah. The last bit is noteworthy, the article goes on to say, says, excuse me, with the screen, having a hard time being able to control this. Okay. The last bit is noteworthy. Trump is setting Bondi up to be his scapegoat. His supporters are already clamoring for him to fire her because they are pathologically incapable of accepting the obvious reality that Bondi does whatever Trump directs her to do. I think they're starting to question Trump. They want to believe that Trump is insulated from this wrongdoing. In reality, Bondi was chosen for the job because of her long history of corruption and because Trump knew that she filed orders. I won't go any further with that, but just I wanted to show you that and put that on the record just to demonstrate how desperate Trump seems to be getting right now. We're going to bring something else and another Truth Social post from Trump. What's going on with my boys, and in some cases, gals? They're all going after Attorney General Bondi, who's doing a fantastic job. We're on one team, MAGA, and I don't like what's happening. We have a perfect administration. And you see Trump using caps as if that's going to program people into believing it, because he capitalizes words to brainwash his people. We have a perfect administration, the talk of the world, and selfish people are trying to hurt it, all over a guy who never dies. Jeffrey Epstein, who never dies. We'll come back to that part. Jeffrey Epstein, for years, it's Epstein over and over and over again. Why are we giving publicity to files written by Obama, Crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and the losers and criminals of the Biden administration, who conned the world with the Russia hoax? Russia hoax, 51 intelligence agents, the laptop from hell, and more. They created the Epstein files. Just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele dossier that they used on me. And now my so called friends are playing right into their hands. Why didn't these radical left lunatics release the Epstein files? If there was anything in there that could have hurt the MAGA movement, why didn't they use it? They haven't even given up on the John F. Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr. files. No matter how much success we've had securing the border, deporting criminals, mind you, we do know that there was a conspiracy to kill both uh, John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King. No matter how much success we've had securing the border, deporting criminals, fixing the economy, energy dominance, a safer world where Iran will not have nuclear weapons, it's never enough for some people. We're about to achieve more in 6 months than any administration has ever achieved in 100 years. And we have so much more to do. We're saving our country and making America great again, which will continue to be our complete priority. The left is imploding. Kash Patel and the FBI must be focused on investigating voter fraud, political corruption, Act Blue, the rigged and stolen election of 2020, and arresting thugs and criminals instead of spending month after month looking at nothing but the same old radical left inspired documents on Jeffrey Epstein. Misdirection, of course. Let Pam Bondi do her job. She's great. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen, and they tried to do the same thing in 2024. That's what she's looking into as AG, and much more. 1 year ago, our country was dead. Now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world. Let's keep it that way and not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein so that nobody cares about. Somebody that nobody cares about. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Well, thank you, Trump. I think we'll not follow your advice. Okay, so in our previous shows, we've gone to document the nature of the connections that Trump has to the establishment. We documented his connection to the Rothschild family. We documented his connection to some individuals in organized crime, some of whom also have connections to the CIA. We documented his connection to Roy Cohn. Significant in that Roy Cohn was also connected to J. Edgar Hoover. Cohn and J. Edgar Hoover both attended parties with underage boys, sex parties with underage boys. So I hope that you're seeing a common thread and theme, because this is not disconnected from what another trial that's been going on, which is the P. Diddy Puff Daddy trial. But you'll see a common theme of sex parties, but there's also connection with underage children and sex as well. Okay, so again, Hoover and Cohn were both homosexuals and pedophiles. I'm going to show you, just for a reminder, a picture of Cohn and Trump. There you see them together, and the heading reads, "Rumor has it that Russia knew he was Cohn's lover, and that is their hold on him." We'll say we know that from the information that we read before that they were very, very close. And I'll leave that there. Okay. And so to also just further provide some context, we want to also show some connections to Epstein. Now, we'll just mention, I mentioned before that this information has been out for a significantly long time. The files include the black book of Epstein. So that's what they're referring to when they talk about the Epstein list. It's his base is basically his black book. And I've read that that black book was something that Ghislaine Maxwell helped to maintain for Jeffrey Epstein, which included, we went through that book in greater detail. I just wanted to show this you this for a review, but we went into that book in greater detail on the last show, showing the whole file. But I'm showing right here, just as a reminder, that Trump is in the black book. Okay, so when they're talking about the list, they're referring to his black book. Now, in addition to the black book, Trump was also on the manifest of his of Epstein's jet, the Lolita Express. They traveled on each other's jets, so they're both on each other's manifest. But we'll go see further when we go into an article to just document the closest between the two of them. Okay, so the caption here says this is a picture of two guys on a private jet going to a private island that didn't know each other. We'll see here that they're very, very close. Um, Assistant name Felicia says Trump is being dumped, which I agree with. Um, and someone else said, so the secret is it could be Trump is gay or bisexual, and makes note of the fact that Trump's chosen theme song, seems to be YMCA by the Village People. I need not remind you that the Village People were gay and promoted homosexuality. We're going to just establish more connections here with some pictures. We'll show here, you see Trump, his two soon to be at the time, or soon to be wife, his girlfriend, Melania Naus, who is now known as Melania Trump. In there, you see Prince Andrew, who says that he didn't know Epstein, but you see Epstein back in the foreground, and you see Ghislaine Maxwell peeking her head into the picture. So, but these are people who don't know each other well, but they're always at parties together. This photo was taken at Donald Trump's estate, Mar-a-Lago, in February 12th, 2000. And here is Trump and his good friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, who the Attorney General Pam Bondi and some lawyers met with over the weekend. And Trump has suggested subtly that the possibility of giving her a pardon is in the realm of possibility, worth some consideration. Uh, and we can see why. They were good friends. So anyone who is thinking that she is going to out him um, is engaged in some wishful thinking. Uh, the deal would be I'll say what you want me to and not out you if you let me go. That's what they're talking about over the weekend. Okay, so we'll monitor closely what happens with Ghislaine. as I'm learning the pronunciation. Okay, so there's so much information. I want to. I alluded to earlier about Epstein allegedly committing suicide in prison, but we also know that there's been a lot of controversy over whether he killed himself in prison, if he was killed, or, and this is my opinion, he was extracted by the Mossad. So I happen to find this. This was posted to a website called 8chan, or 8chan rather, which was a right wing website that had so-called right wing conspiracy information in it. Um, so this post was someone who was from someone who was a prison guard who was working at the prison and was outside of the cell of Jeffrey Epstein. He posted this to 8chan, but not long after his post, the site was taken down permanently and changed. The name was changed, and I don't know if it's has the same information, but they not only took his post down, but they took down the site completely. Okay. So 2 hours, it says, after Jeffrey Epstein's body was found on August 10th, 2019, this message was posted to 8chan from inside the Metropolitan Correctional Center. And he goes on to say, not saying anything after this, please. Do not try to dox me, which means don't try to find out who he is. But last night, after 4:15 a.m., after the 4:15 a.m. count, they took him being Jeffrey Epstein, to medical in a wheelchair, front cuffed, but not one triage nurse says that they spoke to him. Next thing we know, a trip van shows up. We do not do releases on the weekends unless a judge orders it. Next thing we know, he's put in a single man cell and hangs himself. Here's the thing, the trip van did not sign in, and we did not record the plate number. And a guy in a green dress military outfit was in the back of the van, according to the tower guy who let him through the gate. You guys, I'm shaking right now, but I think they switched him out. Okay, bear with me. I have a video that discusses the possibility of Epstein being extracted from prison. Just bear with me. As you can see, there's well, you can't see it, but there's quite a volume of information that that has come out, had come out over the weekend about Epstein. And I think I'm getting close to it now. Just bear with me. Here we go. I think that was it. Okay. All right, good. Go. Oh, you don't want me to play this video now. It was right here, but now it's having trouble being played.
The rumours had been circulating for months. Encrypted messages, sightings, leaked intel, whispers that Jeffrey Epstein never died, that he's still pulling the strings from the shadows. Now the wait is over. The truth is here, undeniable, and more explosive than anyone dared to imagine. Let's not dance around it. Jeffrey Epstein is alive. He's still blackmailing US politicians. And Israel, they've got nuclear. According to verified intelligence out of Tehran, Israel is threatening to assassinate Donald Trump, just as they did with JFK, unless he follows in the footsteps of his predecessors and falls in line. And we have the proof. The world's first confirmed audio of Jeffrey Epstein since his so-called death. And it's not just his voice, it's what he says. What's on this tape and who it came from will tear straight through the illusion the Globe Lily have spent decades manufacturing. Here's what went down. In the final hours before Israel's unprecedented assault on Iran, the attack that nearly lit the world on fire, something huge happened in the shadows. Iran's cyber unit cracked open the most secure intelligence vault on Earth, Mossad. And now, Tehran has started releasing what they found. Buried deep in layers of classified files was something so sensitive, so radioactive, it wasn't even shared with Israel's own war cabinet. A name that was supposed to be erased, a ghost, Jeffrey Epstein. The internal logs confirmed this. Epstein wasn't murdered. He was extracted from that Manhattan jail cell in a joint Mossad deep state operation and relocated alive and active. And what he's doing now? The same thing he's always done, using his leverage, blackmailing the elites, keeping the pressure on the fault lines of Washington, where corruption isn't the exception but the foundation. We've verified the voice on the tape. We've synced the metadata. And when you hear Epstein laughing, naming the names of the bought and the blackmailed, you'll understand why every major outlet turned it down. CNN, Fox, the New York Times, all of them had a chance to run this story. The rumors had been circulating for months. Encrypted messages, sightings, leaked intel, whispers that Jeffrey Epstein never died, that he's still pulling the strings from the shadows. Now the wait is over. The truth is here, undeniable, and more explosive than anyone dared to imagine. Let's not dance around it. Jeffrey Epstein is alive. He's still blackmailing US politicians. And Israel, they've got nuclear. According to verified intelligence out of Tehran, Israel is threatening to assassinate Donald Trump, just as they did with JFK, unless he follows in the footsteps of his predecessors and falls in line. And we have the proof. The world's first confirmed audio of Jeffrey Epstein since his so-called death. And it's not just his voice, it's what he says.
Okay. There's more. I'll have to go to the files on that one, but we'll come back to that. I want to establish the connection between Trump and Epstein. So we're going to go. Sorry. We're going to go to an article. Yes. We're going to go to an article from the New Yorker magazine. Oops, sorry. And in that article, this is where Jeffrey Epstein first came into prominence as a socialite in New York. And at the time, this was well before he was notorious for his pedophilia activities. So the article was really it wasn't an expose on him. It was more of a profile. They were actually showing him as a person of interest. So they were promoting him. They were not um, trying to out him or anything like that. So they were introducing him to the public stage. So, but in this article, and this is where we remove some things from the stage here. Just bear with me, please. Okay, here we go. So I had to remove some articles. Okay, so this is from the New York Magazine, and as I was mentioning, the article was basically a profile on Jeffrey Epstein, introducing him to the public. This is the source of the quote that has been seen in the media frequently, where Donald Trump is quoted as saying that Jeffrey Epstein is a great guy. I've known him for 15 years. But we're going to basically show that that's not hyperbole, that this was actually an article. So I was actually able to find the actual article from the New York Magazine dated October 28, 2002. And the article says, Jeffrey Epstein, international man of mystery. He comes with cash to burn, a fleet of airplanes, and a keen eye for ladies. To say nothing of a relentless brain that challenges Nobel Prize winning scientists across the country and for financial markets around the world. Ever since the Post Page 6 ran an article about the president's late September visit to Africa with Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker on his now benefactors customized Boeing 727, the question of the day has been, who in the world is Jeffrey Epstein? It's a life full of question marks. Jeffrey Epstein is said to run a $15 billion, run 15, Epstein is said to run 15 billion for wealthy clients, yet aside from limited founder Leslie Wexner, his client list is a closely held secret. A former Dalton math teacher, he maintains a peripatetic salon of brilliant scientists, yet possesses no bachelor's degree. For more than 10 years, he's been linked to Manhattan, London society figure Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of the mysteriously deceased media titan Robert Maxwell. Side note, we talked about Robert Maxwell and the fact that Robert Maxwell was a known Mossad intelligence asset. Yet he lives the life of a bachelor, logging 600 hours a year in his various planes as he scours the world for investment opportunities. He owns what is said to be Manhattan's largest private house, yet runs his business from a 100-acre private island in St. Thomas. Power on Wall Street has generally accrued to those who have made their open bids for it. Soros, Wasserstein, Kravitz, Wheel, the Sturm and Drang of their successes and failures has been played out in public. Epstein breaks the mold. Most everyone on Wall Street has heard of him, but nobody seems to know what the hell he's up to, which is just the way he likes it. My belief is that Jeff maintains some sort of money management firm, though you won't get a straight answer from him, says one well known investor. He once told me he had 300 people working for him. I've also heard that he manages Rockefeller money, but one never knows. It's like looking at the Wizard of Oz. There may be less than there meets the eye, says another prominent Wall Streeter. He is this mysterious Gatsby-esque figure. He likes people to think that he's very rich, and he cultivates this air of aloofness. The whole thing is weird. Oops. Bear with me again. I have to remove some things before I can present more. Okay. The wizard that meets the eye is spare and fit, with a long jaw and a carefully coiffed head of silver hair. He looks like a taller, younger Ralph Lauren. A raspy Brooklyn accent betrays his Coney Island origins. He spends an hour and 15 minutes a day doing advanced yoga with his personal instructor who travels with him wherever he goes. He is an enthusiastic member. Ooh, I forgot about that part. He is an enthusiastic member of the Council of the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. That's heavily deep. I won't go into depth on the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. Will just suffice to say that the Trilateral Commission and Council on Foreign Relations are very elite organizations that are traced to the origins of the Rhodes Rockefeller Secret Society, the Round Table Group. They're part of that circle. And for information, I highly recommend going and looking up Steve Coakley's videos and audios on the Trilateral Commission on the Council on Foreign Relations. But if there's anything that is indicative of establishment, those would be the organizations. How he became part of both of the Trilateral Commission and Council on Foreign Relations when he's somebody who at the time no one heard of is significant. So he's well connected. Okay. And so again, the topic of this show is Donald Trump, outsider or establishment. The fact that he's hanging around with this guy who's part of the Trilateral Commission and part of the Council on Foreign Relations, you could not get more deeply connected into the establishment than that. And we've already established Trump's connections to the Rothschild family. Okay, so we'll move on. Let's see, which one were we on? Next page. He dresses casually, jeans, open neck shirts, and sneakers, and is rarely seen in a tie. Indeed, those close to him say the reason he quit his board seat at the Rockefeller Institute was that he hated wearing a suit. So there's another connection. It feels like a dress, he told one friend. Epstein likes to tell people that he's a loner, a man who's never touched alcohol or drugs, and one whose nightlife is far from energetic. And yet, if you talk to Donald Trump, a different Epstein emerges. I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy, Trump booms from a speakerphone. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life. I am going to take see if I can. See what I have here. That one was. We'll bring this in. Just to underscore what Epstein said. Here we see Donald J. Trump, who just made the statement that Jeffrey Epstein likes women on the younger side. Here we see Donald Trump with someone on the younger side in his lap. And some testimony from Katie Johnson, who filed a lawsuit against Trump and Epstein. Katie Johnson says, Mr. Trump had another girl and I dress as maids and pretend to clean the room. The other girl, Maria, was 12 years old. Mr. Trump ordered us to carry out a string of sex acts on each other and on him. After he finished, he said, we both could have done better, and then left. This is from her sworn affidavit about the third encounter where Trump raped her when she was 13 years old. Her words have never been retracted or debunked. And I will bring, I just happen to have, let me remove something before we go there, so to make sure we can bring it up. We will bring in that lawsuit. And hopefully you can read it. If not, I will read it for you. Okay, this is the lawsuit that excerpt referred to. You see the parties here are Katie Johnson, the plaintiff, on line 3. And you see line 4, the defendants are Donald J. Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, each of whom reside in the state of New York. Factual allegations. The plaintiff, Katie Johnson, who we saw in that picture in the lap of Donald Trump. Now I'll just bring that back to the stage real quick. The plaintiff, Katie Johnson, alleges that the defendants, Donald J. Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, did willfully and with extreme malice violate her civil rights under 18 U.S.C. 2241 by sexually and physically abusing the plaintiff Johnson, by forcing her to engage in various perverted and depraved sex acts, by threatening physical harm to plaintiff Johnson and also her family. The plaintiff, Katie Johnson, alleges that the defendants, Donald J. Trump and Jeffrey E. Epstein, did willfully and with extreme malice violate her civil rights under 42 U.S.C. 1985 by conspiring to deny plaintiff her civil rights by making her their sex slave. The plaintiff, Katie Johnson, alleges she was subject to extreme sexual and physical abuse by the defendants, Donald J. Trump and Jeffrey E. Epstein. including forcible rape during a 4-month time span covering the months of June through September 1994, when plaintiff Johnson was still only a minor of 13. The plaintiff, Katie Johnson, alleges she was enticed by promises of money and a modeling career to attend a series of underage sex parties held at the New York City residence of defendant Jeffrey E. Epstein and attended by defendant Donald J. Trump. On the first occasion involving the defendant, Donald J. Trump, the plaintiff, Katie Johnson, was forced to manually stimulate defendant Trump with the use of her hand upon defendant Trump's erect penis until he reached sexual orgasm. On the second occasion involving the defendant, Donald J. Trump, the plaintiff, Katie Johnson, was forced to orally copulate defendant Trump by placing her mouth upon the defendant Trump's erect penis until he reached sexual orgasm. On the third occasion involving the defendant, Donald J. Trump, and mind you, you see all of these are allegations against Trump, not Epstein. He was just at Epstein's house where this occurred. On the third occasion involving the defendant, Donald J. Trump, the plaintiff, Katie Johnson, was forced to engage in an unnatural lesbian act with her fellow minor and sex slave, Maria Doe, age 12, for the sexual enjoyment of defendant Trump. After this sex act, both minors were forced to orally copulate defendant Trump by placing their mouth simultaneously on his erect penis until he achieved sexual orgasm. After zipping up his pants, defendant Trump physically pushed both minors away while angrily berating them for the poor quality of their sexual performance. On the fourth and final sexual encounter with the defendant, Donald J. Trump, the plaintiff, Katie Johnson, was tied to a bed by defendant Trump, who then proceeded to forcibly rape plaintiff Johnson. During the course of this savage sexual attack, plaintiff Johnson loudly pleaded with defendant Trump to please wear a condom. Defendant Trump responded by violently striking plaintiff Johnson in the face with his open hand and screaming that he would do whatever he wanted, as he refused to wear protection. After achieving sexual orgasm, the defendant, Donald J. Trump, put his suit back on, and when the plaintiff, Katie Johnson, in tears, asked defendant Trump what would happen if he had impregnated her, defendant Trump grabbed his wallet and threw some money at her and screamed that she should use the money to get an effing abortion. That's pretty heavy stuff. Okay. I'm going to go back to some videos. Here's a good one. Sorry. Okay. This isn't a video, but I want to read this one into the record. This is from worldstarhiphop.com, and someone named Uncle Luke, who at the time was known as Luke Skywalker, probably until he got sued by George Lucas. But his rap group was called Two Live Crew, if I'm not mistaken. And just to put things in context, Two Live Crew was known for featuring very scantily clad women. Luke was known to have wild parties with scantily clad women, and with emphasis on women. Luke also wanted to try to fancy himself as being a black Hugh Hefner and had created an adult magazine. I don't know what it was called. Um, so this is who we're reading making this statement. Luke says Trump's party had girls that looked not of age and too much freaky behavior that even he walked out early. In a resurfaced interview from 8 years ago, and I'm going to look to see if I can find that maybe for the next show. In a resurfaced interview from 8 years ago, Uncle Luke says that he attended a Trump party back in the day with Eddie Murphy and Mike Tyson, but left after only 45 minutes. He described the scene as filled with naked women in different rooms, wild sexual activity, and vibes he didn't feel comfortable with. Now, that's saying something if Luke didn't feel comfortable. Luke said the women looked too young. There were a lot of things going on, and he didn't want to be caught in the middle of anything illegal or extortion worthy. Interesting that he used that term. He didn't want to be caught in the middle of anything illegal or extortion worthy. Luke had a good intuition because that's exactly what the footage from those parties were used for. He goes on to say, I ain't going to jail behind nobody. And he bounced. Okay. This
They were close friends. I knew in the 90s, so people in Palm Beach were like, yeah, Trump and Epstein, and they're always chasing pussy, young girls, this and that. This is not a secret. It was never a secret what Epstein was and what Trump was. They were close friends. They traveled together. They partied together. They dated, I'll use that word very advisedly, women together. They were close friends. I knew in the 90s, so people in Palm Beach were like, yeah, Trump and Epstein, and they're always chasing pussy, young girls, this and that. This is not a secret. It was never a secret what Epstein was and what Trump was. They were close friends. They traveled together. They partied together. They dated. I'll use that word very.
Okay. So again, I wanted to just put on the record things to establish a close relationship between Trump and Epstein. Here's a former gangster speaking about what he thinks happened to Epstein.
Yes.
What do you think happened?
Jeffrey Epstein would have to be a magician to try to hang himself in that cell. I was in that cell. There's no way there's nothing on the ceiling. The bedpost is this high. I couldn't even go to a restroom without them walking back and forth and having me on camera. You know, there's no way he committed suicide.
So you reckon he was killed?
Yeah,
Why?
I believe it. I mean, look, there's no doubt there was powerful people involved with him, 100%. These people have a way of covering things up.
You were in the same prison as Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
What do you think happened?
Jeffrey Epstein had to be a magician to.
Okay, so we hear the words of a former mobster who occupied the cell with Epstein, giving his opinion about what he thought happened to Epstein. He thinks that he was killed. Again, I think he was extracted, and if I can find it, I can find someone who else shares that opinion. This might be it here. Let's listen to this one.
Epstein was an agent of the Israeli intelligence service. Epstein and his paramour, Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of Robert Maxwell, a decades-long serving officer
of the Israeli intelligence service, Mossad. Epstein met Ghislaine Maxwell whilst he worked in the office of Robert Maxwell in London. Epstein went from being a maths teacher in a state school with no college degree to be a man richer than Croesus. Epstein rose from being a school teacher in a state school to owning multiple airplanes, yachts, the biggest house in Manhattan, villas in Arizona, ranches in Arizona, villas in Florida, and an entire island in the Caribbean. Not bad going. But when you look at the people that he had around him, when you look at the people who gave him money, gave him hundreds of millions of dollars, all of them are deeply implicated in the sins and crimes of the settler state of Israel. Epstein was an agent of the Israeli
Okay, that one also gives credence to my hypothesis that Epstein, as a Mossad asset, was extracted from prison. This is interesting as well. We'll hear this. Again, to establish the close connection between Trump and Epstein.
Treasury's Epstein file details, Mr. President, 4,725 wire transfers. Let me repeat that. 4,725 wire transfers, adding up to nearly $1.1 billion flowing in and out of just one of Mr. Epstein's bank accounts. If you ask me, that is more than 4,000 potential lines of investigation right there. Hundreds of millions more flowed through other accounts. That's even a lot more to investigate. The file shows that Mr. Epstein used multiple Russian banks, which are now under sanctions, to process payments related to sex trafficking. A lot of the women and girls he targeted came from Russia, Belarus, Turkey, and elsewhere.
Okay, that's also significant. The locations that he mentioned of where the money were being wired to. I may not have time to get into this, but we'll do that maybe next time. This video right here will go into it a bit. I'll just quickly summarize it because this is a long video. But Trump at one time owned the rights to a beauty pageant. He also was connected to an individual through the ownership of that beauty pageant who ran a modeling agency. I don't remember his name, but we'll go back to that and we'll go into that in the next video. But he owned a modeling agency and he recruited many very young women with the promise of cultivating them and developing them into models, promising that they could, be top models. I think that might even actually have been the name of the modeling agency. Okay. He recruited young girls from all of those countries that were just mentioned in the wire transfer. The owner or the co-owner of the beauty pageant, Trump's partner, was implicated in human trafficking. So the suggestion is that the modeling agencies serve as a front for sex trafficking. Okay. So Trump wasn't only connected to that type of activity through Epstein, he was also connected through a partner that he was in co-ownership of the beauty pageant with. Maybe we'll go ahead and show this video.
Wow. Melania is trying to cash in on Donald Trump's cover-up of his dark past, his sickening connections with Jeffrey Epstein.
And mind you, he's talking about Melania because Trump met Melania through one of these modeling agencies. And she was from one of those countries where they just mentioned the wire transfers went to.
Efforts to try to cover up the Epstein list and the Epstein files. What do I mean by she's trying to cash in? So yesterday she posted an advertisement for her book, Melania, that came out a little while ago. And she posted the chapter, How I Met Donald Trump. And it's actually very disturbing when you read it because there are a lot of massive question marks in Melania's past. And well, Melania, since you want to volunteer this to grift off of Donald Trump's cover-up of his Epstein connections and the Epstein list, let's delve into it. Like, I think we should delve into, Melania, how you advertised falsely that you went to certain colleges that you never went to. I think you have a very suspicious background from Slovenia, and I think we should explore that. Look, even when you read what Melania posts from her autobiography called Melania, How I Met Donald, it's deeply disturbing. I mean, she talks about how in 1998, she went to this club in Manhattan called the Kit Kat Club. You've seen and heard me report on the Kit Kat Club before, right? That is where the wealthy Manhattan men met young Eastern European women. There was a specific individual named Paolo Zampoli who ran a modeling agency for young Eastern European women. He'd bring them to the Kit Kat Club and they would throw these parties. And Donald Trump was one of the wealthy Manhattan businessmen who showed up, and that's where he met Melania. He was with another young girl or woman when he went to the Kit Kat Club that night and met Melania. And she tells that story in this specific chapter. So let's just go through her background. Let's go through the chapter. You're going to be shocked by some of the stuff I'm going to tell you, right? Because this was right around the time, too, when Donald Trump was like best friends with Epstein, when he was palling around with Epstein, when Ghislaine Maxwell was working with Donald Trump to bring him young women. And this was talked about in the London Sunday Mirror, talked about how Ghislaine Maxwell, 1997, before any of the information about Epstein would get out, it would talk about how Ghislaine Maxwell would bring these young, beautiful women to Trump and these businessmen. And they referred to Ghislaine as Madame Maxwell is how they refer to her as. So just take a look at some of the photos of what Melania looked like when she was in Slovenia. Photos here, photos there. You see her right there. Now let's take a look at Melania's fake college degree. Probably forgot this story, right? CBS reported July 29, 2016, Melania Trump's website taken down after her degree claim is debunked. Melania Trump's website that had incorrectly claimed she had received a college degree has been removed, and the address now redirects visitors to the Trump Organization's website. The website's removal was first noticed on Wednesday by the Huffington Post. In a tweet Wednesday, she said that the website in question, created in 2012, had been removed because it does not accurately reflect my current business and professional interests, or maybe because it was false and fraudulent. The website had claimed that she had received a college degree before becoming a skincare entrepreneur and philanthropist. CBS News confirmed during the Republican National Convention in Cleveland last week in 2016 that her claim that she earned a degree in design and architecture at a university in Slovenia was false. Not true. The convention program read, after obtaining a degree in design and architecture at the University of Slovenia, Melania was jetting between photo shoots in Paris and Milan, finally settling in New York in 1996. This was a direct quote from the website. CBS News checked the official public records of the university, and Melania Trump is not listed as having graduated there with a degree. Also, she plagiarized her entire speech from Michelle Obama's speech at the convention. So take a look at how she describes meeting Donald Trump. And again, this was the time when Trump was as close as can be with Epstein. Hi, I'm Donald Trump, Chapter 5. On a Friday night in September 1998, as I settled into the comfort of my New York City apartment after a whirlwind trip to Paris, my phone rang. It was a friend of mine. My boyfriend is throwing a party at the Kit Kat Club tomorrow night, she said. Please come. We haven't seen each other in so long. I just got back from Paris. I said, please, it will be fun. A lot of people will be there. We'll pick you up. While I was tired and jet lagged, I loved the idea that my weekend was about to be filled with the company of friends. I have always been selective in how I choose to spend my time and where I put my energy. A late night party at the club was not my top choice for a Saturday evening. Just pause there. You were taking a lot of nudes at this time. That's what you were doing, which you've since posted about, and you said you loved your nude modeling career. Currently, Russian state regime media is posting a lot of those nude modeling photos. And these weren't like the nude modeling photos that go into like the high art type of magazines. These were like the nude photos that go into the other type of magazines, if you know what I'm talking about. So then she goes, I didn't want to shy away from social gatherings. I accepted the invitation anyway. After all, it was Fashion Week, a time of glamour and sophistication. Like everything she says is such BS, right? I was actually looking forward to mingling with industry insiders and trendsetters. When I stepped into the sleek black limo, my friend arrived. I felt like a celebrity en route to a gala. As we arrived at the Kit Kat Club, the energy of the crowd and dazzling lights greeted us. The Kit Kat Club was not that type of club. It wasn't like a beautiful gala. It was kind of like a sleazy club. Inside the dark, crowded space, buzzed with models, photographers, editors, and designers mingling on this Fashion Week Saturday night, I settled upstairs at a table in the VIP section where the atmosphere was one of sophistication and camaraderie. Oh, the Kit Kat Club. Oh, it resonates. Sophistication and camaraderie. Some guests danced while others engaged in lively conversations, and we're all enjoying ourselves. I saw my friend wave at someone behind me. When I turned around, I noticed a man and an attractive blonde woman approaching us. Hi, I'm Donald Trump, the man said when he reached my table. Nice to meet you. I recognized the name, and I knew he was a businessman or celebrity, but not much else. He put his hand out to shake mine. Hello, I replied. I'm Melania. His eyes filled with curiosity and interest. And seizing the opportunity, he took the seat next to mine and started a conversation. He asked me about my time in New York, my Slovenian home, and my world travels. It was a moment of connection, a brief encounter that left a lasting impression. It was nice to make a new acquaintance. He was accompanied by a beautiful date, so I initially dismissed our conversation as mere pleasantries exchanged at an industry event. The music was loud and the crowd boisterous, making it difficult to truly connect with someone. From the moment our conversation began, I was captivated by his charm and easygoing nature. So in other words, Trump was there with another young woman. He saw Melania. That's how they met at the Kit Kat Club. It was not a place of sophistication. She starts dating him. She gets an Einstein visa in 2001. They get married, and her visa gets expedited.
Snoring, hogging the covers, tossing and turning. These are problems.
Okay, we're going to leave that one. And bear with me. There's another one that I wanted to play for you that also discusses the disappearance disappearance of Epstein from the prison. And again, as I pointed out, I do not believe that he committed suicide. I don't believe that he was killed. I believe that he was extracted from prison. And let's see here. Okay, let's listen to this one.
6 years ago, I made a film with Kathy Newman for Channel 4 called The Prince and the Paedophile, about Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew. In the wake of that film, I had a series of very lengthy telephone conversations with Virginia Giuffre, who was Jeffrey Epstein's best known victim. Virginia told me all the men she was found out to, and that in itself is a lengthy and horrifying list of men. And it would not surprise me at all if President Trump was striving to protect those people.
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff.
These people who gathered around Epstein were not outlandish freaks. They weren't outcasts. They were a very representative sample of the American business, political, and academic world, the American elite. So it's hardly surprising that both parties, when they're out of power, demanding openness and transparency around this case, once they're in power, seem to be a lot less interested in all the names coming out.
He's dead. He's gone. It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net.
Jeffrey Epstein was very probably connected to the intelligence services, to American intelligence services, and to Israeli intelligence. He quite possibly had compromising material, tapes, recordings, a powerful man. All of this will have contributed to why he got away with his actions for so long. But also you have to see Epstein as an albeit extreme example of the power and the privilege and the impunity of the tiny elite of fabulously rich people who effectively run the world today.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years.
And Virginia was certainly aware of Donald Trump as a sleazy presence around Jeffrey Epstein and moved in exactly the same world. In fact, there was clearly a period where they were quite close friends, although she was clear that she was never abused by him. Although Virginia was recruited by Jeffrey Epstein while working at Donald Trump's Florida home, Mar-a-Lago. In a magazine profile in 2002, Donald Trump described Jeffrey Epstein as a terrific guy, likes women almost as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. Trump and Epstein seem subsequently to have had a falling out, but they were absolutely part of that world together. Epstein died in a prison cell. Today, Donald Trump is president of America. After coming to power, Trump got the Justice Department to release the Epstein papers. I don't think there was a single document that hasn't been sitting on my computer for 6 years. It was a completely bogus exercise. And actually what was significant was the documents released by Trump's Justice Department were heavily redacted, whereas the versions we had were unredacted. I have flight logs and I have the little black book. So Alexander Acosta, who was Trump's Secretary for Labor in the first administration, back at the time Epstein was arrested in 2007, 2008, he was the US Attorney for Southern Florida. In his hearings to take the job of Secretary for Labor for Trump, he reportedly said that he had been told Epstein belongs to intelligence. Leave him alone. It seems to me absolutely clear Epstein had connections to the intelligence services, probably to Mossad, probably to the American intelligence services. Of course, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, is well known as having had extensive links to the intelligence services. Robert Maxwell was buried on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. His funeral was attended by 6 former heads of Israeli intelligence, and he was eulogized by the serving Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, who said he has done more for Israel than can today be told. Robert Maxwell very definitely moved in that world. Whether Jeffrey Epstein had connections to the intelligence services in the same way that Robert Maxwell did, I should think it's quite likely. So I woke up on the morning of April 26th to the terrible news of the suicide in Australia of Virginia Giuffre, who's the best known of Jeffrey Epstein's victims. The thing about Virginia was the abuse she suffered at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein was not the first abuse she had suffered. She'd been abused throughout her childhood. One of the repellent things about people like Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein is they home in on, they have an instinct for the vulnerable, for people who, in Virginia's own words, have been primed for abuse. She was angry, obviously, with Jeffrey Epstein. She was angry with the phalanx of women that surrounded Jeffrey Epstein and were his enablers and facilitators. Particularly, she was angry with Ghislaine Maxwell. Mary fucking Poppins, she used to call her. She would say, I'd never have gone to that man's house if it hadn't been for that woman with her posh English accent. And of course, also, during those long conversations, we talked about the men she had been farmed out to. She was abused by Jeffrey Epstein. She was abused by Ghislaine Maxwell, who she was quite clear was an abuser, a very sadistic abuser, as well as being a facilitator. Virginia told me she was then abused by a whole string of men who Jeffrey Epstein presented her to them, sort of on a plate as a sort of gift. Prominent men from the worlds of business and politics in the United States, obviously Prince Andrew, world leaders. And what was extraordinary was you discovered that when very powerful men who can pretty much have whatever they like in life are offered a 16-year-old girl on a plate, bizarrely, what they seem to want to do is to hurt her. The number of them who were sadomasochistic was extraordinary. One of them very nearly killed Virginia. Virginia was a very strong woman, apart from this one man who she was terrified of. She used to say, I'd go for him if I didn't have children. Because I have children, I won't do that. I remember talking to Virginia about her watching the Prince Andrew interview. She was furious. She was so angry watching that interview. And what angered her was his arrogance, his belief that he would get away with it.
I can tell you categorically, I don't remember meeting her. Nobody can prove whether or not that photograph has been doctored. I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at.
And I remember she said, that 1%, they believe they are above the law, that 1%. Now you listen to other Epstein victims talking at length in interviews, and they say exactly the same thing. The thing that absolutely enraged them and repelled them was the elitism of Epstein and all of the people who surrounded them. The belief they were above the law, the belief they existed in this gilded club of wealth, power, influence, and connections. It was a gilded club they belonged to, and very firmly, you did not. And anyone who did not belong to that club was worthless. We had Jeffrey Epstein's infamous Little Black Book. It was enormous, hundreds and hundreds of names. The first thing to understand about the Little Black Book, and this isn't commonly understood, is it was really Ghislaine Maxwell's book. And you can tell this because the numbers, for the most part, have American prefixes, but they don't when it's a British number. So for the most part, it's her book. And Virginia used to point out, Jeffrey was actually a rather weird, strange, nerdy person. What Ghislaine did was she was this sort of social lubricant. She opened up social worlds to him. This was Ghislaine's entry point to his world. It's her selling point. And she was keen to show off. The people who matter in the Little Black Book are people who also appear in the notorious flight logs and also in the Little Black Book who have numerous numbers. There are over 20 telephone numbers connected to Bill Clinton. Donald Trump, 14 numbers. Alan Dershowitz, 11 numbers. There are 7 numbers for Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel. Also, 10 numbers for Peter Mandelson, who is now the British ambassador to the United States, of course. There are 2 pictures, of course, that exist of Mandelson with Epstein. And they're not pictures at some public event where they just happen to be standing near each other. The first one, they're out shopping together. They're the only 2 people in the picture. The second one, it's clearly Epstein's birthday. Someone is bringing him a cake. Jeffrey Epstein referred to Peter Mandelson as Petey. That was Jeffrey Epstein's name for Peter Mandelson. He called him Petey. Why was Peter Mandelson spending time with Jeffrey Epstein? It's a really interesting question. We have to be crystal clear. There is absolutely no suggestion that Peter Mandelson was involved in any criminal wrongdoing. One suspects Mandelson was attracted to the whole world of Jeffrey Epstein, and certainly the image that Jeffrey Epstein sought to convey of moving in a mysterious world, a mysterious closed world of power, influence, and connections. I remember talking to one man who knew Epstein well, He said, my memory of Jeffrey is he was always smirking. He was always smirking. I said, what was he smirking about? And he thought for a bit and he said, he was smirking because he knew things you didn't. He wanted to convey the image anyway that he was part of a closed world of connections and power and secret maneuverings that you could never enter. He knew secrets about an awful lot of people, and obviously there's speculation around his death. He had been placed in a cell where he was on suicide watch. He was taken out of that cell. His cellmate was taken away, and on the night he died, the two prison officers who were meant to be regularly checking on him slept through the night. The American government has now released surveillance footage from the prison where Epstein died. 3 minutes of that surveillance footage are missing. Those are the bald facts. It's clearly an extremely suspicious death. Jeffrey Epstein was a financier. He'd originally worked at Bear Stearns. He'd been sacked from Bear Stearns for sort of fiddling his expenses. In the 80s, he worked in a very murky world, in the world of arms dealing. I suspect made lots of connections there. He then went into businesses with this man called Steve Hoffenberg, and they basically ran a pyramid scheme. In the early 90s, Hoffenberg was sent to prison for quite a long time. Jeffrey walked away scot-free, one of the early mysteries in Epstein's life. He then worked as sort of financial advisor to Les Wexner, who was the CEO of Victoria's Secrets, and seems to have made a lot of money from him. Around 2006, 2007, Palm Beach police down in Florida, where he had a home, launched a very serious investigation into Epstein and gathered a load of information on him, a mass of evidence on him. Now, had he been a poor black man, he would have spent the rest of his life in prison. There's absolutely no doubt about that. He got a ridiculous sweetheart deal, about a year in prison. He had day release. He was actually able to go and work at his office. He got a punishment that in no way fitted his crimes at all. Justice didn't catch up with him again for more than a decade until he was arrested in 2019. Epstein died in 2019. But the coterie of men who he farmed these young girls out to, for the most part, have just walked away scot-free from all of this. Virginia was very frustrated that the legal cases in the UK didn't go anywhere. Now, under legislation at the time, as I understand it, Prince Andrew actually wasn't guilty of a crime. The age of consent was 16, she was 17. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell potentially were guilty of a crime, trafficking. But having been initially greatly encouraged by the attitude of the police, suddenly that went nowhere. Virginia was never able to establish why, but one can only assume that pressure was brought on the police from above. So Prince Andrew, it's reported, he eventually paid £12 million to Virginia's charity to settle with Virginia. Now, of course, this is money ultimately that comes from us. I mean, Prince Andrew never earned 12 million quid in his life. So it was essentially us, the public, that ultimately paid for Prince Andrew's alleged crimes. Now, as for Virginia, it was clear that in recent months she'd been having a bad time. She posted recently following apparently a car accident. I think she was going through a very messy divorce. I actually reached out to her on the number I used to have for her, but I didn't get a response. Inevitably, there are conspiracy theories around her death. Her family don't seem to feel there is anything suspect or suspicious about her death. But what I would say, Virginia used to say to me, sometimes I don't get the exact date right, sometimes I get the locations wrong, but believe me, you never forget the face of a disgusting old man grinding away on top of you. And I think the faces of those men were etched into her soul. She was a very brave, courageous, fun woman. She and the other women were told they were nothing, they were worthless. She took back the power and transferred the shame. But within her, she clearly carried around this enormous weight, the enormous weight of a whole childhood of abuse. It would seem that in the end, that weight crushed her. And even if they were not directly responsible for her death, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and all of the other men who abused her, all of whom have walked away scot-free, they are all responsible for her death. Virginia Giuffre's story is a casebook study in how the powerful, the wealthy, and the privileged are all too often not called to account for their crimes.
Okay. I have quite a bit more, but we've gone a long time, so I'm going to end it here. We'll pick it up again next time. on Journey in the Self. We'll do part 12. I would guess that more information will be coming out, but so much has come out that I haven't even been able to get through it all. But I hope you found this to be informative. I would encourage you, when you have time, to go back and watch some of the previous episodes of Journey in the Self, where we went into Donald Trump outside our establishment. And mind you, we were doing this before Elon Musk brought increased attention to it. So I'm glad that this is coming to light. So with that, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time here on Journey in the Self. Hotel.